the 7th step to migrate from SAP PI to process orchestration. Hey, my name is Dan Greversen. I just want to share a little about myself before I get started about these 7 steps. So I have been working with SAP integration for at least 12 years. I'm an SAP mentor that's trusted in the community, and then I'm a runner and a father. So today's topic is obviously migration. Why is this important? And one of the things that we want to do is, or why we want to migrate, is to get a simpler platform. If you have a dual stack system at the moment, it may be a little challenging for you to manage all of the things and make sure it works and patch and everything like that. So the PI, or the process orchestration, is a leaner and easier to monitor application and platform that you have. It has a different licensing form. So the old one, PI, was process or license based on the message size, how many gigabytes you are sending to non-SAP system. This is just licensed on the amount of cores that you have, and obviously this depends on what you're using it for and how many cores and everything like that you have. But it's a different license form, and in some cases it makes sense because you would also get, for instance, a B2B add-on as a part of this system. So the SAP has mentioned that this platform will, or the dual stack, will not be developed any further. Obviously there will still be some support packets and releases, but the dual stack, nothing would happen on it. So the more interfaces that you're creating on it, the more you have to move away from it at some point in time. To be able to get this continued enhancement and make sure that you're getting all the latest things that are happening. And then obviously you're asking about what the business case of it. So and that's where it becomes challenging. So the support of this may be a little leaner. You may get some more features that would be easier for the business to handle, but at the end of the day, it just is about having an up-to-date system that you're able to update and patch and make sure you got the new functionality when business wants the new whatever REST adapter with the specific functionality. Then you can easily be able to give them because you're on the latest release. And you're not making legacy code. That's the two big selling points on this. So the 7 steps we'll go through, just go through them briefly here. So we'll cover first what are the goals with your migration. Then you want to figure out what the current status is. Then you want to find what are the different patterns that you have. How do you estimate the resource consumption of this? Then we'll talk about the migration phase. What kind of process steps do we have in this? Then we'll talk about what are the development steps that you need to do. And obviously testing is important in this process. So what are your goals for migration? And I guess this goes a little back to the why we're doing this. Is this speed performance you want? Is this just to clean up? Because over the last 12 years, I've created a lot of garbage. And some of this may not be relevant anymore. You may have patterns that you can avoid, or some scenarios that actually is not even relevant anymore. And you can clean those up. So you can simplify some of the things. You have also learned some things in the process. And then you may be able to get rid of your C-Burger and save some on that license also. So that's some of the goals with this. Next up is you have to get an overview of what are you currently using it for. What type of integration is happening, what's going on. And you need this in order for you to figure out what's happening and what are the interfaces we need to move and stuff like that, and obviously get an overview of the current state, because otherwise you don't know if you have 200 or 300 interfaces. It makes a little difference in the time estimates you have. So the things you want to get for all the integration, all iFlow receiver determinations is, well, obviously the name of this specific flow. You want to get what are the volume for each of the interface, how many messages is going through this, so you would be able to, based on this, you'd be able to clean up and say, okay, we are not running this interface anymore, so there's no reason to migrate. We can just scrap it. And the more you can get away, the better. But obviously, I think it would be rather slim of few amounts of interfaces you'd be able to get away with. Then you want to do synchronize, and what are the when you're looking at volume, synchronize and interface can be a little difficult to monitor how often these are called, and you may need to find other ways to monitor these. Business can dialogue about what some of these components are they used anymore, or should we do anything specific in it. So obviously you want to get those guys involved, and also so you at a later point know who is in charge from the business for these components, because during the last 3-5 years some of those people that created these interfaces may have moved on, and the responsibility is different. Then you want to map and put, I guess, tagging or putting attributes on the different scenarios. So we want to say, what are some of these that are critical, either for the business time-wise? Are there any time dependencies on these things that need to be completed at a certain period of time? For freights, are there any message data that is critical? And then you want to figure out what are the different patterns you have. And when you're talking about patterns, it's the enterprise patterns that you're using. Is this either as sync async? Is this collect process pattern? Or are there any other generic modules or patterns you can use? Or do you have just created your own? And with that, you'll be able to say, okay, we got this pattern of sync async bridges, and with that we can then move those to one guy that would then do all of these works. Some of the fields that is relevant for these things to collect is, obviously, we got scenario ID. You want to have an ID for this specific interface. We have a scenario, sender, party, receiver, interfaces, receiver. Interface type is this RFC, IDOC, number of ICOs. So if you're just doing on a higher level, you may just have number of ICOs, number of mappings used in this. If they're splitting, then obviously that makes sense, or if you have chaining of different mappings, it may become a little more complicated. Messages last month, I think that's the easiest, just to see what was happening the last month or something like that. And you probably want to get a full month. And then you have to figure out, are there any of these interfaces that's just yearly? Criticality, you want to break this into how critical is this for the business? Is this something, okay, it's nice, we can live without it, or if this is down, company is stopped. And obviously all of these interfaces is somewhat important, but others may be more or less important. You want to urgency, how long time is this allowed to fail? Is this 5 seconds it can fail, or can we do a fail for 2 days without any problems? What are the messaging volume? We got that, like a number of messages, but we also want to get the payload size. How big are these messages? Because that are also something that would have an effect on how we're designing things. Patterns, async, sync, collect, patterns that have been used, and estimation, migration estimation, how big is this? and then you may have some challenges. You want to specify the passwords missing or anything like that that's going on, and then show what are the status. So you got on a column, you can say how well is this processed. So you just have one, either a Google Doc, Word doc, or whatever that people could edit in. Then we'll go to a bit more into pattern mappings, and you may have done that already, but obviously this is a kind of a iterative process where you go through some of these things, find out, okay, we need to go back and figure out how we're collecting all of these data. So it's not a linear approach we want to do here. So a pattern, I would say sync, async, RFC, web service enablement. So something that you have done a lot and is helping the business in different formats. And you may want to figure out, is this the ideal way to do it, or is it just something we would move, or is it something that we actually think we should recreate to get a better performance out of this based on what we know. For example, if it's RFC web service enablement, you may be able to move it to gateway, but obviously that would be a different project and cost more than just move those two things, those interfaces. But it may give you a platform and the ability to do other things with these data. Then you probably want to learn some new things. There's the iCode, there's iFlows. You want to use the S2 adapter, SFTP, some of the new modules, and the B2B add-on, and NetWeaver Developer Studio. So these are the things that you want to do when you're creating this pattern mapping, or say, listing all the different skills that may be required to get this done. What are the resource consumptions that we have for this? How many developers would you need to do these things? So I guess a good rule of thumb is to split when you have your interface list, put them into buckets, saying we got something that's easy, that will be a day, we got some middle, that will be 5 days, and we got some highly complex BPM scenarios that may be 10 days. And you want to, based on that would be the estimation. You also want to figure out, is this something we'll do internally, or we'll get some external developers to do this? And I think a lot of migration projecting makes sense to get external developers involved, because it is not, it's just something you need to get done, and then you can focus on your core business, developing the new interfaces that's setting you apart. And it may give you a different perspective about what you're currently doing and what's working. And with that, is it something core, or do we need this skill for managing the future? And obviously, if you're getting developers, external developers, and you want to get some knowledge transfer for them, so you're able to create your own scenario and use the new platform, new skills that has been involved there. And then you also need to figure out how much does the business need to be involved in this, because I think the business could care less about this in most cases, because it's just a technical thing and they're not getting any values from it most of the time. So it's like, just go away, do it yourself. We are happy with what we got already. So a little about what are the different phases that you would have in the migration. So I think the first thing would just to move a single interface or a few interfaces up that are maybe just file to file, a simple mapping, not anything that's connecting to everything else, and take it in the critical few messages category. And this is a benefit of having put this into these categories. The reason for doing that is you want to make sure the business or the system works, and you know how to handle exceptions and what to monitor, how to monitor, and all of these things. So you got the platform running, and is able to see, okay, we got it up and it's working, it's nice, and we can then you can start to take, for instance, some of the high volume interfaces just to make sure that the platform would scale to the amount of data that you require from it. Then you take some of the critical interfaces where you have the full support, and then you may take the rest of the interfaces along the way. And then at the end you would just take the assisting interfaces or what you just need to migrate, and then save the testing. So I guess this was point of, if you have, for instance, while you're in the process, and it may take a year or whatever you schedule it, if the business say, hey, we got this new thing we want to develop, can you do that? You can always see, depending on your scenario, you can say yes, move it to the new platform, move it up, because then you got them to test and make sure that everything works. So that would be a kind of a free migration that you would do in that perspective. So this would be something that would most likely be in between or after number 1, that you at least are able to see the platform work, and then you can take all the other components. So how does the development work for a single interface, or whatever it would be like? So you got to move the software components. You would export and import them. I obviously consider is do we need to rename these things, but in general, if you start to rename it, becomes really a big ass project that you need to figure out how to handle. Then we want to move the Java modules and adapters to NetWeaver Developer Studio. And get into development infrastructure, and in these you may have to just do a little rework to update them to J2E 6, I think it is, and Java 8. There's a different way you can modify these things and just make sure they're up to date, and it's a little easier to maintain them. Something has changed, so it takes a few minutes per module, but it's a good thing to do it and get development infrastructure set up so you can move things into it. Then SAP has a built-in tool, that's migration tool, that will allow you to migrate from one platform to another, where it can take a communication channel or an iFlow, a full flow, move it over and copy everything and stuff like that. So it works good. It has some limitations. Sometimes it's not possible to use, but most of the times you would be able to, at least part of your migration would be able to be done by this, and then you would do the rest manually. Then my channels migration, you may need to enter passwords again. There's a tool from I can't remember the name, Amrian, that's called Udo. It's a documentation tool that allow you to extract passwords and import them on the newer system. So that would help in those cases. And it's also a great tool to get and update your documentation, figure out what's going on in it. Then we got the test. Obviously you need to test once you have migrated these things, does it work the same way? And then it needs to be transferred to a landscape, tested all the right places. One of the points I'm pointing out here is testing, because it is important. You don't want to involve the business and partners in testing, if at all possible. Because obviously one of your business partner could care less about what platform you're using or if you have upgraded it. So if you can guarantee that everything looks the same, we have not changed anything, it's just go ahead and do these things. So you can easily collect, is there an easy way to collect test data, process it through and see it looks the same, and with that you can prove nothing has changed. Obviously, you need to make sure that the adapters and those kind of thing works. And then you may want the tool for support and document the test cases. So that was so I had a big frustration about this, and this is about testing. It's that testing with the business, most of the time they are not able to really replicate the complex scenarios they have in production system. You may have, if you have a system copy done recently, you may be able to get some fairly good data. If the business is up to creating the specific document that is really making it difficult. So you want to pick out the real productive data, download them, send them through, and it's probably the best way to do that. And then the business test is most of the time when they're testing, it's too simple, so they'll test end to end, which is good, and you need to do that, but it's not testing the full capability of your mappings or modules. And some things have changed in the message mapping over a period of time. So if you have an older version of it and you have complex mappings like EDFACT mappings, then some of these things may affect the way you are doing your development. So you may want to have one document that just covers the whole thing and makes it easier for the business to do these things. So one of the reasons I created the integration regression test tool was to make it easier for people to do testing. So the benefit of this tool is it would log on to your productive PI system, pick out a few messages, and then you'll be able to run them on your development system and verify that from the message is inside the module chain to it leaves the module chain, everything looks the same, and you can verify the message, JSON, XML, binary, to see everything looks the same. And once it's done, you can say, okay, we have tested as much as we can internally, it looks correct. Obviously, you want to test the adapters. Does it connect correctly? Is the ES2 the same encryption, stuff like that? But it tests the message looks the same, and if it does that, you're able to scale down on some of the tests with the business and with partners, because you can just say, hey, the partners would not even be able to notice that we have done any changes because it's seamless and it's working out of the box. So that's the reason I created it. You can have a look at the link ficaf.com/IRT to learn more about it, and obviously get a trial and see how easy it is to set up tests. And it's also a tool that's really useful for upgrading and maintaining your system. If you want to read more about migration, I've created a blog. You can find it at this easy readable link, ficaf.com/QN9S. So I hope you go to that link and get some more idea and information about how I do migration, what's important in that perspective. So thanks for watching.